Okay, sorry about that. Just had to type something in real quick. I know everyone is kind of probably working tirelessly on their UVs and hopefully getting started on your textures. Obviously, we want to get as close to that as possible in the next week or so. So today, I just wanted to kind of, I'm here to answer any questions if anyone signs on and asks any. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of move forward so you can sort of see what the next step is. We've kind of done this a little bit already in class, but I did a little bit of work on the UVs for my character. I still have a few more to finish, so you're going to see me finishing up the kind of the packing that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to get over to Photoshop and start texturing. I might do a little bit of texture bake from ZBrush or XNormal. I'm not sure yet. I'm just going to I don't really have much of a plan, but to just kind of work and see if I get any questions, so I'm just going to move forward with that. So, I might occasionally stop talking while I focus on some of this stuff, but I will be paying attention to the chat window. We'll just see what I get. Alright, let's see. I have my outliner over here, so that's what I'm looking at right now. Just trying to make sure I've got all my pieces. So, let's see. So I've decided to split mine up mostly by clothing, but more just by halves. I'm probably going to have 3 materials, though, and I'm just going to pipe the same texture into both my skin. I'm going to probably have one separate material just for the skin, and then another one for... You'll see I don't actually have eyes in here right now. I guess I need to figure out... I can't remember if I modeled those or not. Yeah, okay, I do have them. So I'll get the eyes in there too. But yeah, so I'm going to do skin as one material, but I'm combining the skin with the scarf and the hair and the eyebrows and probably the eyes. So you'll see that I have already started packing the body in. That's pretty much there. I could probably... Yeah, let's see. The gloves could go up a little bit. But again, like I was talking about, I'm keeping most of these things kind of grouped together. So all my shoe UVs are up here, with the exception of the shoelaces, which are down here. Pretty much this whole area is the jacket. Got my legs up here, just these 2 little pieces. And then the glove is all the way down the side here. So, see I have this one straight piece kind of split off because I want to be able to make the change. I may end up just attaching this to the top. I'm going to see what I end up doing with texturing. If I look at the model, I don't really have much of a strip around there, but I've got a little bit. So I might want to just make this piece here and then paste that in. So we'll see. So today I'm probably not going to get finished with texturing, but I do want to block the whole body in at least. And that means essentially breaking down the color values, having a little bit of variation, maybe do a little bit of work on the materials. You can see there's a very this concept anyways has a very hand-painted look, and I actually want to get that across in the model, which means a little extra work in texturing. And I'm not sure that I'm going to get to do all the hand-painted look stuff today. I mean, for a good texture, I'm probably going to spend a day or at least a full day or 2 on it to really make sure, especially since this is going to be a portfolio piece, to make sure that it is really, up to the standards that I want it to be. So, but we'll see where I get today, and hopefully it'll be a good example of the procedures that you guys can take to finish texturing your characters. So, that being said, I'm going to scale the gloves up just a tiny bit, I think. I'm looking at my reference and looking at the model and kind of figuring out what areas I want to be bigger. So already you can kind of see the face gets a pretty good amount. The face is probably pretty much even with the gown area here, or the jacket. The scarf, unfortunately, I can't really make a whole lot bigger because this piece here stretches all the way across, and I don't really want to make a second seam on that. This I could probably lay out a little bit better, I'm not sure. Anyway, let's look at this stuff. I could get a few more pixels out of this. I'm going to move this little piece of the shoe up, and just, let's see, scale this up a little bit. Again, these are not huge changes, but, you know, every pixel counts. So if you can get a few more, you might as well. No good reason not to. Doesn't take that long to pack things in just a little bit tighter. Obviously, the tighter that they're packed in, the more efficient the texture is going to be. It'll also be a little bit trickier to work on. Where is this? Do I need that? Yeah, okay, I do need that. I thought this was like the underside of the jewel area here, but I don't have one. I didn't think that I did, but I couldn't remember. Yeah, every little bit counts, you know. It'll be a little bit harder to texture because it'll, you know, to draw our maps, we'll have to draw out or trace out mats between some of these pieces, but you know, that's not really harder. Harder's not really the right word. It's just a little bit more time consuming. But ultimately, we're looking for an efficient final model, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's see here. So, another thing that I'd like to show, as you can see, the gloves and the shoes are, they're not mirrored right now. But because these are going to be potentially in different poses here and there, I'm actually going to use, to make better use of the space, because there's not a whole lot of space left in here, and I don't want to reorganize everything, and because I want to make better use of my texture area, I'm actually going to duplicate these. So I'm actually just going to do that now, and then I'll show you how you can still keep this so it's textured the same. So we're going to go to scale -1. That works because I had my pivot set to 0 on the x-axis. And I have the glove just kind of grouped together as one piece. You can kind of see over here. Glove is one piece. The shoes are not right now, so I'm going to have to put those together. Actually clean this up a little bit while I'm at it. Alright. Let's poly combine these. Oh wait, hold on a second. I think I had made an adjustment to the shoelaces already. Hold on. I gotta check something. Because I need to, even though I'm going to keep the UVs the same as the shoelaces, I need to actually move the shoelaces around a little bit so they're not posed exactly the same, because that'll look kind of weird. I don't remember if, I think I deleted those, so let me grab those from the old file real quick. Oh, and I hit don't save. That's right, I just saved recently, I think. Okay. So you can see these are like a little bit different. I have this moved forward because I was interacting with it, so I'm just going to export this real quick as an OBJ. Export selection. OBJ is already set. Let's see. Right lace. Go back to the last file. Just get that imported. Okay. File import. The rest of the shoe I can just duplicate because that's going to be identical. Ah, wrong button. Shoot, sorry. One moment. Let's try this again. Okay, laces. I already forgot right lace. With 2 C's apparently. Doesn't really matter. Okay, let's bring that into our UV layer. And just put the UV texture on that. So these actually got a little bit off because I moved the laces around. So I'm just going to make sure these are lined up. Yeah, I didn't change the layout at all. So this is going to be, let's see, as long as it's close, because I'm going to give myself like a couple pixel buffer too. So like even if it goes off a little bit, that's not really the end of the world. Alright, I'm actually going to do these one at a time. This looks like the layout got changed just a little bit. So this will all make sense in a moment. Okay, I guess the scale got a little bit changed as well. So all I'm trying to do is match these up so they're 90% identical. Maybe 99%, 98%. Basically, I'm going to use what I end up texturing in Photoshop is going to be applied to both of these. So I have to make sure that the UV layout is essentially the same. And then I'm going to offset them, the UV space, by exactly 1. So So that way, just so they're not on top of each other. That comes more into play when you're doing things like your texture map baking, like occlusion maps and normal maps and stuff. You can't really have things overlaying when you go into XNormal or even in Maya, whatever tool you end up using to bake your maps. If things are overlaid, then you get bad maps. Let's see, pretty close here. And I'm mostly doing this just because I don't feel like doing the real remodeling again. I just forgot to move these together. So, let's see, this is the weird little cluster in the middle. Okay. Alright, that's close enough. So now all I'm going to do is, I showed this in class, but show it again, just for a little bit of reinforcement. So, hidden space there. Oh yeah, I forgot I've got that software to show what I'm doing. What was that called? Key pressing with a Q. Key press. So I have to run it from here. So this way it'll tell you all the buttons that I'm using. Yeah, here we go. All right. So, just click that, and now it's exactly offset by 1 to the left. You could really do this in any direction, and it'll still map up, because like I was telling you guys in class, whatever you have textured here is going to keep tiling. So like this will then be the same thing over here, over here, over here. So as long as you're moving things around by exactly 1, it will still map properly. Alright, let's take a look at everything else. So I'm going to poly combine the other lace, because I have that as a separate piece, so it's a little bit easier to split up. I'm going to combine those, delete history, and center pivot. And let's see. Oh, I also want to delete the namespace on this, on the import. Wait, what is this? Oh, that's just the import thing. The shoe. So shoe left. Duplicate that. It's going to be shoe right. Always naming things as we go. Alright, before I do the -1 though, I want to make sure that the pivot is right on the x-axis. Oh, scale 1. That's weird. Okay. So just going to the front. And this character's still reversed. That's because I started the model off in ZBrush and I had the object-oriented kind of odd, or rotated. That just kind of happens sometimes in ZBrush. If I started with Dynamesh and I just worked from the wrong side because there isn't this indicator down there in ZBrush, so you don't always know. I'm going to rotate it eventually before I do any kind of rigging, but for now I'm going to keep it the same because I'm still going to have to import these UV models back into ZBrush. Anyway, -1. Going to freeze transformations scale, which puts it back to 1. The only problem with that, of course, is that reverses our normals, so I have the reverse normals already bookmarked up here, so there we go. And you'll see now these both occupy the same UV space. If you look over here, only difference is I'm going to take this and I'm going to also move this one over exactly 1. So now you'll notice that both of these are offset, but they're in the exact same place as these. So if I were to take this and go over by 1, you'll see they overlap. So that means that the texture will align perfectly to both of them. So now I'll just do that same thing to the glove. I already duplicated it, so I'm just going to freeze my transformations on that. I'll just hit all because I haven't really done anything else. And then reverse normals. Select my UVs and move them over. Okay. So I think that should be everything now. The body is ready to be exported. So when I export this to Maya, I don't actually need to have the duplicates selected because I already have a reference for them over here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know I've done this process before, but now I'm actually doing it with my finished UV model. So, do that over here. UV snapshot and images. Let's see. I'm going to call this. Let's see. Let's call it clothing. Even though there's still a little bit of clothing in the other one, I'm going to call it clothing. 1 in case I have to make changes later. Hit OK. I'm hitting Control S to save real quick, and we take a sip of coffee. 1 minute. All right, so a little bit more work is required on the top. Let me get her. See, I have the I think it's called a glaive. That's what I'm calling it anyway. Her weapon here. I'm not going to worry about this today. This is actually going to be its own separate texture map. Just because that's how I want to do it. I want this model to be kind of a self-sufficient model on its own that makes maximum use of the UV space. So that's what I'm going to do it that way. And honestly, you can see it's probably going to need more resolution than the whole main character because it's 2 to 3 times bigger than she is, which is what makes this such an awesome character. By the way, I should probably give props to this guy. Let me see if I can find his website real quick. This is easily one of my favorite concept artists. This guy is really, really good. I'm going to find his art space. His art space is fantastic if you guys want to follow him. Or Art Station. Yeah. Slept enough. Yeah, so this is the guy's art station. The current concept that I'm working on is not in here. I found it on his blog somewhere, but I just think this guy's work is fantastic. Really well rendered. It has a very Miyazaki feel to some of it. It almost has like a Dark Souls feel. Like he does a really good job of like stretching things out and creating really weird anatomy. That all works really well, though. It's not just like, oh, he's not getting it right. It's like he knows exactly what he's doing. And it's freezing right now, of course. But yeah, he does some really cool stuff. So I always like keeping an eye on him. I'm a big fan. I was also considering I may end up doing one of his other characters somewhere down the line. I really liked the I don't know why this is so slow right now. I really liked the work that he did on these like forest creatures that he did. Anyway, so check that guy out sometime. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, but you've seen it now. So look him up. Mikhail, I think. Mikhail Rakhmatlin. I don't know. I'm sure I said that wrong. I'm sorry, Mikhail. Alright. So, oh yeah, I was just getting the eyes. So, as you can see, these are not, these are just spheres right now. And I'm going to block her in that way. I'm going to make more complex eyes later, like the ones that I showed in the video. But for now, I am just going to do these separately. And actually, I may just make this its own separate UV, also its own texture. Well, I guess not for this. Let's do these real quick. So I am going to I'm going to leave this eye here. What's the difference? Just negative. Okay. Okay, just going to take this. I'm just going to do a planar projection on her eyes. I find that that's the best way to do eyes because then you can just do a nice circular image here. And I already have so many stock eyes that I have that I can start with one of those and just make sure that it's mapped properly. So I'm going to do this on the Z-axis. And then finally, I'm going to solo this out real quick. And I'm going to delete, I'm going to split it out here. And actually, no, I'm going to just delete this for now. So I just don't need it. And I'm just going to flip these because she's actually rotated because she's rotated right now. So I'm just going to go around. When I do my unfolds, I like to do it this way, kind of unfold the outside and keep the inside pinned, and then just kind of soften the inside based off of what I get on the outside. And so just shift select. Oh, hold on. Missed one. Shift select, and there we go. So that's pretty even. For now, I'm going to leave it maximized. This can be nice because then in Photoshop you can work and just do like use the spherical marquee and have a nice perfectly centered eye image. But I think because her eyes are pretty small and she's kind of a small character and I'm trying to make her a little bit more streamlined, I'm probably going to fit this eye into the rest of the body. Let's see. Let's see. Unsolo. So you can see, obviously, it has a ton of UV space right now. So actually, let's see what we need to do to get it close. I would say it still needs to be kind of bigger than I thought it would have to be. Sometimes I like to look at it orthographically to get a better idea. Yeah, I think that's about right. Okay, let's move this out of the way for now. And I want these eyes to be more or less the same. For now, I'm going to leave them the same. This is one of those things where I might have to change it at the end. After I make the model, I might be like, her eyes look exactly the same. I need to do some changes to them. But for now, I think this should work. Because really the shape going around the eyes, what's going to make it different. They should look more or less the same. This isn't like hyper detail that I'm going for. So, I accidentally did that. Let me go back to my UV panel. Alright, so scarf, face, eyes. Delete this now because I'm going to do the duplicate thing with that too. And I should probably do the same with the eyebrows. The eyebrows doesn't really matter because they just kind of fit nicely up here. So I don't really need to save space on those. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is take this piece, rotate it 90 degrees, and let's see how that fits in. Alright, so I actually can scale this up a little bit more than I realized I'd be able to. First, let me see if I can pack this in a little bit better. Okay, that's pretty good. So before I scale this up, I want to make sure that I have these next to it, or anywhere really, but I want to scale it all up together. So I want to make sure that I have those selected when I scale this, because I don't want this one strip maximized and then these are going to be slightly different. So since I know that all three of these pieces are perfectly to scale right now, I'm just going to do this. Let's make sure we make maximum use of the width of our UV map. And then move this all the way down, because this piece is going to go all the way across. You can see we got a little bit more space out of that. It's getting pretty close now to what we have to the density that we have on the jacket. So I'm pretty happy with that. So let's see how this fits in. This might not fit in fantastically, so we may need to scale a few things back down. But I could probably actually turn on my soft select. I need a different fall off on this. A softer fall off. Oh, come on. Move that down. Let's see. Where am I working right now? Oh yeah, this corner can be a little bit deformed anyway because you're not really going to see it. So I just moved that to make it fit. You always want to do that with soft select because you don't want much of a distortion coming from that. Be really careful about that. So this piece is kind of unfortunate because I have this one strip that comes around here. I don't want there to be a seam there, but I think I may end up settling on there being a seam there. Because I don't think this is going to quite fit in the way that I want it to, but it's going to be really close. Yeah, so you can see it, like, it almost fits perfectly in here. Man. So I am going to settle, because that fits so well in there, and means I don't have to scale anything down, I'm actually going to move this down a little bit. I'm actually just going to cut that piece off. I think it's worth taking the seam. Let's see, where is this? Where's this triangle? Okay. I'm gonna cut that actually, just because I want that attached here. So I'm gonna cut this. I know I'm still going off of there a little bit. Cut that, move that in, it fits nicely in here. And then basically what I just did before, soft select this, just keep an eye on what we've got here. But I think that's going to work. So it's a little bit distorted in here, but this is such a teeny piece here. You're not going to really see it very closely. Okay. So I have this nice space in here. I'm going to scale the eye down just a little bit more. Actually, I can scale it back up. It's going to fit in here pretty nicely. It's going to be a great looking texture map too. I'm going to have a nice split face with this nice eye just right in the middle of it. So that'll look cool. Alright, so I think that's pretty good. I think it's pretty efficient. Could probably make a little bit better use of the space, but you could always make it a tiny bit better, but I'm not going to sit here and, you know, obsess over maybe getting an extra 4 pixels per piece. It's just not worth it, especially since I am demoing right now. I don't want to make you sit through that. Alright. Oh, wait, I got to duplicate it first. Go to negative, or positive, I guess, because, yeah, because of her orientation. And, yeah. So now I have 2 separate texture groups, and I think I'm ready to get to texturing. I was thinking I might want to actually, well, first, yeah, because this is just moved, so I don't actually have to move this out of the way. I don't have to do the reverse normal and freeze and all that stuff. I could if I wanted to scale it on that axis, but I just moved it. So, I'll leave it alone. Alright, so scarf, eyebrows, eyes. And that should be everything. Sometimes you have to hit F to frame. Like sometimes when you select things, it just doesn't show it all up here. It is selected, but so anyway, let's go take a snapshot of this. 4096. And this is come ahead UV scarf and stuff too, but I'll remember that. One second. Okay. So there's a few more things I could do in here. I could start to break down her shader assignment, and I think I might do that now just for selection purposes. I'm just going to select the whole model, or no, sorry, not the whole model. I'm going to select each piece. Oh no, yeah, I'm going to select the whole model. Create a new render layer. I call this material assignment. And I'm going to open the hypershade. I forget which one it is. I think this one now. I usually just open it through the menu, but might as well do it this way. So I think just to block her in, I'm not going to get into the MIA textures yet. I might do a separate video just on that. So I'm just going to stick with blends for now. Make 3 of them. I'm going to call the first one skin. Actually, I might need 4. I'm probably going to need one for the eyes. Skin, clothing, and then hair, scarf. These are going to be the same. And then I'm just going to go select the hair and scarf and eyebrows. They're all, considering eyebrows part of hair. They're going to get this one. And just these colors can be anything. This is just so I'm kind of remembering for myself, like, and I can make a quick, easy selection. I could always just go to this layer and do one thing I don't think I've covered yet, but you can always do right-click on this and do, where is it? Select objects with material, and it'll select any object that has that material. So I like to sometimes split things up, and you're kind of creating like selection sets or something like that. So let's give skin here. I'm going to make one more blend for the eyes because those are going to need a special, they're going to need special material properties. Again, I could do some of this stuff through the texture and through, you know, different specular maps and stuff like that, but for now, to make it easier on myself, I'm going to set it up this way in Maya. So let's just make the eyes blue or something. Skin. We'll make it kind of a skin tone just to sort of make it sort of make sense. Then clothing, we'll just go with, that's all this. And that's going to be kind of greenish. because her overall color is this green color. Okay, so now at any time, and I'm going to change the, I'm just going to put an M in front of all these for material. This is completely unnecessary. I'm only doing this so it lines up the way that I want it to over in the hypershade, because right now you can see the UV is kind of stuck in the way. It'll change once I refresh. So it sorts alphabetically, I think, by default. So let's see. Yeah, there we go. All I gotta do is click back and forth and it'll refresh. So now all 4 of my materials for her are all in a line. I can come in, I can select any objects by UV, and, you know, it's a nice way to do things. So we have this section is one layout, and this section is another. And okay, so I'm going to hit save on that, and I guess I'm going to go over to Photoshop now and start blocking this in. So I'm going to have this off screen, but just so you know, I'm looking pretty closely at this. I may end up actually opening it up in Photoshop like I did in class, just to show the color selection and stuff that I'm doing. But let's see. I'm going to have a different Photoshop file, I think, for each texture map. So I'm going to start by opening my UVs. This is, let's see. Images. Oh no, that's right. I'm working out of this folder right now because this is part of my real project. Okay. So, just like with all the other ones, we make our new layer, fill it with black, do image adjust levels on the UVs to make them 100% white, label this UV, and hit save. And I'm going to save this to my Photoshop folder. So, real quick, you know, you can do this however you want. I have a big projects folder on my computer, and pretty much every 3D project or assignment or pretty much anything I put in here. Any kind of 3D work that I'm doing, I put in here. And usually within this, I'll have like documents, which is like Word docs or notes or anything. Images, which could be, you know, works in progress or whatever. And then just the name of the software that I'm using. So Keyshot, I did some test renders in Keyshot. Marmoset, I've been doing a little bit of setup in there. Maya, obviously this is where my whole Maya project is. OneDrive, I think, was just some reference that I had been storing on OneDrive that I downloaded. Reference, it's pretty obvious. All these are pretty obvious. So ZBrush is where I keep all my ZBrush files because I've started to sculpt her hair and everything. Actually have that up right now. So you can see her scarf still needs a little bit of work. It's a little too, you know, I really like the treatment. You know, I kind of did some experimentation, and I liked this sort of like hard sort of clay polish look on her hair that I did, and I want to apply that to the scarf still. So eventually I'll be doing that. So all this stuff is going to get taken care of through normal maps and like the wrinkles and stuff around here. Some of these need to be cleaned up. This I had just started to rough in, so there is still sculpting I have left to do on her. But, you know, I'll get to that at some point. But I can still start kind of blocking things in before that. And, you know, getting the textures. Makes for a good demo character, so. Okay. And then there's one thing I want to think about. I may end up remodeling her dress area to actually topologize some of these folds and stuff. But for now, you know, I can work back and forth. So if I change my mind, I could always just redo that one piece and try to keep her UVs more or less the same. But anyway, moving forward. So I'm going to save this as head UV, or let's see, head texture 01. And then let's do the same thing over here. this UV. UV always stays at the top. Hit save, and this is going to be called clothing texture 01. So, since I already did a little bit of test stuff on the clothing, I'm going to start with her head today. I think that'll be kind of interesting. So, her hair orientation's a little weird. So let's just start just by blocking in the colors that we want. And I'll just do that kind of across the board. So, yeah, I'm actually going to bring this into Photoshop. Just to get some color selections. I really like this color palette, and I want to stay true to the character. I'm going to make a second version. I want to keep this original version, but I want to make this second blurred version just to help me pick my colors a little bit better. Just going to like lens blur at like 12 maybe. That's pretty good. Maybe like try 15. And this just kind of gives me a better average of what the values are. So for her skin, I'm going to take 2 color selections. This is kind of the lightest. And this is kind of her shadow color, which I'm going to think of more as like the rosiness on her cheeks. And her nose is actually another third reddish color that I'm going to get to. One thing this character is missing right now, and I can't tell, he doesn't, in his drawing, at least at this resolution, it doesn't look like there's any kind of eyelashes. I think I'm going to add eyelashes at some point. But, you know, if I look at my model right now, and look at my UVs, let's pull that up again. If I add something small like eyelashes, I can easily fit that in here. I can fit that anywhere. So I'll usually leave, like, you know, you have some of these, pretty much no matter what layout you're going to do, there's going to be little spaces where you can fit stuff if you add anything more. So obviously, like, her character is almost totally blocked out at this point. She's in very good shape. She's almost finished. So, like, things like eyelashes, that's a really minor change, so that's going to fit in. At this point, it'll only be minor changes to her. So, now that we have our 2 colors for her skin, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make a folder for diffuse, like I showed you in class. I'm going to make my other folders now just to have them. Normal, and I'm just going to call the last one spec for now because we're still working with blends. And I'm going to make another folder inside of diffuse that is called skin. So every layer that I make for the skin is going to work here, and the reason I'm doing this is I can come in and, let's see, I know that all of these pieces are her skin. So I'm going to make a layer mask so I can just kind of work freely and not have to worry about any of the stuff that I paint or fill. I don't have to worry about any of it covering anything else or overlapping with other elements. So this might be something that you want to set up first, is just like set up 3 layers. Like in my case it's 3 layers because it's the scarf, the hair, and the face. On the eye too, actually, so I might have 4 layers. However many you might have. And you can always add more. Nothing's stopping you from adding more. I just got to cut this one piece out, because that is her eyebrows. And once you have your selection, that will automatically create the layer mask when you click the button. So that's a nice way to do it. So now, if I were to fill this with my base color, she's kind of a pale character, so make sure that I switch this to foreground color. And there we go. So first thing I'm going to do is just block in all of her major colors, and I'm going to bring it back to Maya just to make sure that like the major values are looking about right. So I know this comes straight from the painting, but I think I might actually select something a little bit closer to a skin tone. It's a little bit more yellow than I want. So let's see, just hit an eye. Let's get like the side of the cheek maybe. Yeah, I think I like that a little bit better. I don't know, maybe that's a little too dark. Alright, let's leave it alone. I'm going to call this skin base. Now I'm going to do just a noise trick. I showed this, I think Linda had asked about this. I think I showed this up on the board, but I know we were doing working class, so I don't think everybody saw it. Skin and a lot of things have variation. Anything in the natural world obviously is going to have variation. Even things that are painted perfectly one color, there's always going to be slight variations. And it's nice to try to get that into the model a little bit. So even though this character is kind of cartoony and smooth and not super hyper detailed, besides just the actual like hand painted feel that she has, you know, there's going to be little bits of variation that are gonna, you know, set her apart. You know, you can see like there's almost not a single pixel that's the exact same color in here. So one way to just do that really quickly is to create a new layer. I'm gonna fill this with white, and I'm just gonna add noise to it. Just add noise. I'm gonna probably, it's kind of up to you how noisy you want it to be. This is really just kind of adjusting the, let's see, I like to stick with uniform, and I keep monochromatic on because I don't want any color in there. Call this noise. So there's two things you could do. I could overlay this, do a blending mode, which gives me, did not mean to do that. And that gives me, you know, a certain level of variation already. But say I want this to be a different color. I want the noise to be a different color. So what I can do is use this noise as a layer mask on another layer. So I'm going to take that secondary color that I had, fill a second layer with that, call it skin secondary. I might call this skin primary. Now I'm going to keep it base. I like calling it base. So what I'm going to do now is hit Control A on PC. I think on Apple it's like Command A or something. Either way, it's select all. You could also just use the marquee and drag over everything. I copy this, and then I'm going to make a layer mask on here. Now clicking Alt on this button brings up the workspace of the actual layer mask. So just hit Control V, paste it in there. And one last thing, this is too fine right now, so I'm going to just do a filter blur on that, do a lens blur. I want this to be pretty low in its blur. I think 8 is probably going to be about what I want. And all that this is going to do is allow me to give just a little bit of natural variation. And this is one of those things too where you could kind of just do this over your whole texture if you wanted to. I like to do it on a like per piece basis. Skin in particular benefits from this a little bit. But you know, sometimes I'll put like a rusty texture over it, like I think I showed you guys at like 10% just to sort of break things up a little bit. Anyway, yeah, so if I go back now and turn the noise layer off, you can see I've got this nice variation, and it's a little bit intense right now. Part of that is because I have it as normal. If I set it to maybe multiply, let's see, that makes her way too dark. So I might just keep it at normal, and just drop my opacity down to like 30. 30 looks pretty good. Let's just see what I got with that, what I get with that. So that's the extent of where I'm going to take it right now. We'll see where I get later. Obviously, the face should have a lot of variation. I should be able to put in my tablet out here. You know, there'll be some redness on the nose and around the cheeks, and then a little bit around the mouth. Although the mouth we're not even going to see because it's covered up. Ears, basically anywhere where the skin gets a little bit thinner or bone kind of pushes out, you're going to have more blood. Most of the time, you're going to have more blood vessels that are kind of closer to the face or closer to the surface of the skin, which is why you get the redder pieces. So you'll notice a lot of times in your knuckles, too, your knuckles might be a little bit more red than the rest of your body or the rest of your hands. But yeah, so let's leave it at that for now. You can see the difference between that. Just gives me a little bit more of a natural look. And I'm going to just keep this noise layer here with the visibility turned off. Alright, so let's do hair next. A new folder called hair. And I'm just going to look at my model again just to make sure that I get the right layers. So the hair and eyebrows basically are what I want. So yeah, just these 3 pieces and up here. Again, one of the reasons that it's great to put things into as few pieces as possible is stuff like this. Now I deliberately split these out because I wanted these pieces to be, I wanted to have a different direction to this in case I wanted to put some sort of a hair, you know, texture. She doesn't really have one, but I might want to put just a few little strips that are really, really faint to sort of indicate the directionality of the hair. The sculpt itself should have a little bit of that in it, but, you know, and then I've got one more back here. So just the way that I wanted to split it out. Or one more in the front, I guess. Yeah, so this is all one big chunk. Alright, so back to Photoshop. And now let's pick a couple colors from this. I think a good average color is right there. And then let's do our highlight color. Just something like, I think I want the slight darker. Okay. X is just the toggle over here to flip the layers back and forth. So that's what I'm doing if you notice that happening. So now let's create our layer mask for the hair. Oh no, that's right. Start that over because I want both of these pieces. Not a lot to talk about here, just making my selection. Making sure I don't have any overlap. Another nice thing about doing the layer selections, and I think I talked about this in class, is just, I hate the way these are so sensitive sometimes. It's just nice to have these selection sets and to work kind of non-destructively. You know, this is almost the same as just saving versions of your file. Because any time I can turn a layer off, or I can adjust my selection set. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take long at all. So I was just holding Shift there to add to my marquee selection. So let's make that, and let's make a base layer here. Base caps. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. So I'll call it hair base. It's inside the hair folder, so there's not going to be a lot of confusion, but it never hurts. And it takes 2 seconds. It never hurts to label things. And it can potentially hurt to not label things. So her eyebrows are actually a slight dark. I think they're a slight bit darker. There's not a lot in here. I'm going to go like with an average. I think it can go a little lighter than that. So I'm actually going to, on this hair base, I'm just going to fill... You know, the nice thing with the layer masks, I can just kind of haphazardly drag a big selection here and not worry about something going wrong. Just hit and save every once in a while. Alright, one more folder. Actually, I'm going to be 2 more. So scarf and eyeball. Why not? So scarf is going to be bigger selection here. The scarf actually takes up more space. You can see on the image, I mean, when you look at this, the scarf is about 2/3 and then really a little over 1/3 on the hair, a little less on the face. So the layout's pretty even. That's all I'm saying. So let's just take our time, make sure we don't overlap at all. So as with anything too, remember, this is one way of doing it. This isn't even a way that I do it all the time when I'm texturing, but I find, you know, this is a good way to block things in. You could also just go straight into ZBrush and start painting, or you could just take a brush out and just start painting these how they are without doing all these layers. But I like to keep things segmented like this because, again, you know, your art director or client may decide that they want a different color for hair, and you know, rather than repaint all of that, if you just painted everything on one layer, it's easier, or to have to reselect it, it's just easier to already have that hair layer and just add a level adjustment or curve or hue adjustment to that. So, you know, keeping things separated and clean is always an advantage. It takes a tiny bit longer to set things up this way, but it's always worth it. So for this one, the eye, I'm actually just going to use marquee selection, holding Shift and Alt. So Shift keeps it the same aspect ratio, and then Alt just means that it pulls out from the center rather than, you know, normally it'd be like that, but if I click Alt, see, it goes from the center. And then I'm just going to move it using the arrow keys. So I have this one tight spot here, so I'm not getting much of a pixel buffer. So let me actually do this again. I just want a little bit more buffer on the edge. Then again, this part is kind of inside of the eye, or inside of the head. But there we go. So scarf, let's take a look at the scarf. It's a much lighter green, so let's turn the blurred version on. Yeah, I'll do the yellow spots on it. I don't need to yet. The yellow spots I'm probably actually going to do in ZBrush so I can make sure that I actually at least block them in at the right place. So ZBrush you can actually paint. I can show you real quick. ZBrush has a tool called Poly Paint that actually allows you to paint directly on the object. So let's go, let's see. What? Oh, do I have it hidden? Okay, there we go. So, you know, I can go to white color here, fill it with a greenish material color. Sorry, just gonna adjust here to have my Wacom tablet fit on the desk. Color. Fill my object. So ZBrush actually lets you come in and just paint directly on. So turning Z add off and RGB on. You know, I can look at my reference here and just paint right onto it. So that way, you know, in Photoshop it can be tricky because I don't know exactly where each polygon lines up. But here I can come in and just make sure that I'm painting it exactly where it needs to be, or at least as close to it as possible. So that's really nice. And there's a couple other things. So if you have Substance Designer, you can also do this. If you have Mari, you can do it this way. If you have Mudbox, which we do have in the lab, you can paint this way. And the nice thing with Mudbox, and I think Substance is the same way, it's actually based off of the resolution of your texture map, so you can actually set that. ZBrush, unfortunately, and this really hopefully will change one day, because I think it's a big disadvantage to texturing in ZBrush, is the fact that Polypaint is based on a poly. It's basically a vertex painting that gets baked into your UV map. So what that means is that each polygon gets a color assignment. So basically you're limited in resolution by the resolution of your model. So you have to subdivide really, really high. Whereas like in Mudbox or something, you know, you can see, like I'd actually be able to just be like, well, the texture map that this is based on is going to be 4096. So I'll get, you know, maybe like 25 pixels inside of this polygon that I can paint. So I'm hoping one day that ZBrush changes that. I feel like they have to, because I feel like, I mean, ZBrush, in my opinion, is the best sculpting tool out there. It's my favorite anyway. But that's like a really, really big disadvantage when it comes to doing texture painting. So hopefully that changes. Of course, you know, if you keep things separated, you can paint at a high enough resolution that it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, I just think it would make the program a lot stronger. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about those right now. I'm just going to come in and pick a lighter green color and maybe a darker. Let's see, one of the darker greens. And I'm going to make a new layer. Scarf, base, fill it. I don't know, I want to fill it with the lighter green. And actually, yeah, I'm not even going to touch the darker green. So, save. So the eyeball, this is where it's going to get a little bit more complicated, but not really much more. And I'm going to do this through layer masks also. So I'm going to call this eye white. Call the next layer iris. The next layer pupil. So eye white, that can be the base. I don't need any kind of special layer mask on that. Again, eye whites are never really fully white, so, you know, especially with her. I mean, part of this is because, you know, with a painting, you're going to paint in shadow and stuff. But even so, you can see, like, an eye is never going to be completely white. It should be a little bit off-white. So I'm going to take this color, move it more towards the yellow or red. Maybe a little bit lighter and a little bit less saturation. And that's going to be my eye white color. I'm just going to fill the whole layer with that. And now my iris, I'm going to make another layer mask here. And she has pretty big eyes. Her eye, I'm going to guess right now. I'm not going to know until start working on it. I'm going to make a folder actually for the iris, because the iris is, this is the most complicated part of the eye. The pupil can just be black, and the white, unless you really want to get veiny and accurate with it, the white is going to pretty much just stay white. I'll make a new folder for iris. Call this iris base color. And again, going back here, I've got this is our light, and then I'm actually going to take the really dark here. I'm going to make a little outline. Make sure that's inside of my iris layer. And I'm going to fill it with the base color. But now, let's see, how do I want to do this? I'm going to make a second layer. There's a couple different ways I could do this. I could do a stroke inside. And then I can just blur the heck out of it. So it's something like 40. And that kind of gives me a nice result. But I'm kind of stuck with this now. So instead of that, let's take... I'm going to paint other things inside of the... I don't want to do this. A couple different ways. So I could do the layer mask thing, which I had showed you guys before. But I think I have to do it on... Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking here. So there's the stroke option, but I don't want to use that. I want to use inner shadow. And inner shadow is going to give me pretty much the same thing. The problem right now, let's see if I can make this non-directional. Oh no, I'm sorry, not inner shadow. I want to I want to do inner glow. Shadow will have to be from a direction, but I'm going to change my glow. Even though it's called inner glow, basically it just gives me a ramp that goes in from the outer range. So what I want to do is set it to normal. I'm going to color pick this black line that I had pulled. Set the opacity all the way up to 100. And I'm just going to adjust this to go in a little bit further until I get something that I want, that I like. So choke, that just kind of pulls it further to the edge. I think that's actually a little darker than I want. Yeah, I think that works pretty well. So the other thing I want to do, the pupil, I'm actually going to delete something from the middle of this, because I want to have that same shadow kind of coming out from the center. So I'm going to make her pupil about that big and move my selection. I'm just going to hit delete. You can see that that gives me that same rim coming out from the middle too. Many different ways you could do that. And actually, yeah, because of that, I'm just going to actually put the pupil underneath and just fill that with black. Fill with foreground. So there we go. Not perfect, but that's a good start for an eye. Okay, so this is really basic, but I'm going to save this now, and this is the initial blocking for the top portion of the character, which is more or less this area. So obviously it needs a lot more detail, it needs a little bit of painting, it needs some variation of the values. But I'm going to save this now as a JPEG and bring it over to my Maya scene, and we'll just see what we have. And it's 2 o'clock already, so I may actually start doing a bit of a render setup before I do the bottom half of the body. Let's see. Do it over here. Okay. So back to Maya source images, and I'm not going to do a new folder right now. I'm just going to call this. What have I been calling this? Head diffuse 01. Is that what I want to call it? Yeah. When I do my final, I'll probably change the naming convention, but for now, this works. So see what I was saying? Nice, weird texture of, you know, this just looks funny as its own standalone thing with a nice eye right in the middle of it. So this is also like that effect thing. It's really clean and even, which I might not necessarily like. You could always just kind of paint this in yourself, but for now, I think for blocking and planning, I think it's fine. So let's open our hypershade. Let's click this. I'm going to show you a different way to do this. So rather than just selecting our material, I'm going to map our material and then just create a texture. So let's see, we want hair, basically we want hair, skin, we want all three of these. So I'm going to drag over all of them. I'm going to click this button, which shows me all my inputs and outputs. So each of these is the material, or each of these are like all the big material things, and then this is sort of just the material description. Ignore, you can pretty much, for what we're doing, you can ignore these blue ones. There's really nothing here that you need to worry about. So I'm going to make a new texture node. And this is just a kind of way to be a little bit more efficient. And I think I have to do file texture, right? Yeah, file. Move this out of the way, and I'm going to Control A just to bring up the attribute editor for it. I'm going to map our head on here. And if you remember, I was saying that all three of these are going to share the same texture. So rather than, you know, I could select these and click this button and add a file and all that. But then, you know, if I do that, that's going to get sloppy. If I do that for all of them, I'm going to basically create like I said, triplicate of this image. So instead, I'm just going to take the out color, I'll plug it into the color there. You can see, I'll put it up here so it's a little easier to see. So this is just the material placement node. I think I showed a few of this. This is if I wanted to repeat the texture. Say I had like a tileable texture for the ground, or for the UV map, for example. I would repeat it a few times just to tighten it. But now I can drag the same attribute, out color, and let's see, it doesn't do it the way I was hoping. Move this just a little bit closer here. This is kind of the beauty of node-based editing. A lot of things are done this way now, and it's just, you know, you can very easily just drag things into new areas. And if I hit 6 now, see, it's a little bit closer. So her pupils are enormous right now. They're way bigger than they need to be, and her iris as well. So two ways that we could address that. I could come in here and just kind of do it manually. Selecting this edge, selecting this, maybe doing a scale up of sorts. The problem is, well, the problem is I don't want to do that because I don't want to change the outer layer of this. I could pin these down. Let's see what happens if I just did like the inner one. So if I'm careful, I could do this. The problem is that kind of gives me a pinching that I don't really like all that much. So I think the best thing would just be to go back to Photoshop. This is why, you know, before you get really too in-depth with anything, it's good to just sort of see how it's looking. I want to soften this too. This is bothering me. Okay. Because things like this will show up. You'll realize it's not quite what you were expecting. So let's go back and let's just change the iris color. Or the, I think we can actually just change, yeah, I'm just going to scale it down, and that should take care of it. Again, I'm holding Shift and Alt to scale to the center. let's do the same thing with the pupil. Because now the pupil is a little too big. Let's see how that looks. Saving the Photoshop file, and now the JPEG. Just hit replace. And yeah, it should. Okay, changed here. Okay, yeah, it did change. So it's still pretty huge, actually. So now I think I could probably scale this up a little bit. Get a result that I actually like. So close now. I don't really want to keep scaling down the resolution, because really most of the resolution of the eye should be in the very front like this, because that's the part you're actually going to see. You can see I've got that nice skin variation in here now. Let's see, I'm going to check this against the reference. Okay, go a little bit smaller still. I want the pupil to stay the same now, but the iris to get a little bit smaller. So I think that is pretty much what I want. Seeing the shape of her eye needs to change a little bit, actually. But I'm not going to do that right now. Let's make the pupil a tiny bit bigger. I would only recommend doing it this way with the eye when you get it really close. Scale it back down a little bit. Once you kind of get that to where you like it, I would suggest selecting all these UVs and just doing an unfold again, just to sort of relax them a little bit. You're not going to grab the outside one because you want that to stay in place. We don't want to go outside of that and overlap with anything. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. So we didn't make that adjustment on this eye, so I'm just going to delete that and duplicate this one over again, because that's much quicker. So, see, we're getting a little bit closer to what we want. Just solid colors right now, so it's not super pretty. But even little things, like if we turn on, I can't remember if I have occlusion turned on or not. I don't think I do. Or if I do, it's very, yeah, it's not turned on. So little things like that can kind of just add, you know, just a nice look to it. You can just see it sort of darkens the corners a little bit. Set that a little higher. I'm going to turn this off. But already, that's looking kind of neat. So let's see, 209. Actually, yeah, let's do the bottom half of the body real quick. Just a quick block in. Got time. So going over to Photoshop. Save on this. I'm going to move this one over just by carefully dragging it. And again, with our folders, we have our diffuse. And I do this just because it's, the more you work, the more you like to see things be the same and really think about things and plan them out ahead of time. I always know when I open a texture for a model that when I get there, there's going to be a folder for diffuse, there's going to be a folder for normal map, and there's going to be a folder for any other texture maps that I have to make. And it's just nice to know exactly what I'm going to be getting when I open a file. I'm not going to get a Photoshop file that just has stuff strewn about that's not labeled. It's just really bad practice to work that way. Because if you ever have to pass things on to another artist, it's going to take, you know, they're going to waste an hour or two just trying to figure out where all of your stuff is. So really try to get in the practice of this. And that goes for Maya too. Actually, I mean, I'll show this real quick. I don't think we've talked about it too much. But, you know, keep an eye on your outliner. This is where all of your objects are. And already I'm kind of getting a little out here. I need to move this into the mid-res. I have a low-res test that I was making. I have that hidden right now because that's just irrelevant. Let's see, the glaive. So I have laces, high. All this stuff's irrelevant. except for this. This also goes into the mid-res. Let's see. I should actually go into the shoes. So I got a little bit out of it here too. Lace. I'm going to make a group for shoe left and shoe right. But, you know, don't have a ton of extra stuff over here. Like, really try to clean this up. A lot of Maya's bugs and crashes and things like that just come from, like, leaving tons and tons of empty nodes. I don't know exactly how that works, and, like, I don't know the full extent of if that's true, but I've noticed that, like, the messier the file, usually the more often it tends to crash. I don't have scientific papers on that, but for my personal observations, that's what I've noticed. So you see this slow rotation. That's just because I have the occlusion turned on. I'm going to turn that back off. Just slows things down a little bit because it's fancier rendering. So anyway, let's see. I know, get a little sidetracked here, but shoe left, and just make a new group called shoe right. Move this up. I'm just middle mouse dragging it up to this, so it'll put it in there. Put that lace in there. Now I have my left and right shoe. I have my shoes together. I have the head, which is all of the head pieces all in a group. These are for the most part labeled. Her left, so I left, and I right. Eyebrows, face, hair. So this is going to become more and more important once we get to rigging. The model itself can mostly just be grouped into one big group, but if we're not labeling our joints as we go along, it essentially just becomes impossible to work that way. So, you know, get in the practice of it now, because you're, you know, in the coming weeks, this is going to become very, very important, much more so than it is right now. Plus, if you just have a messy model coming in, it's going to make just the whole rigging process as a whole be more, you know, more frustrating. All right, so that being said, let's go back to Photoshop. Hey Shane, how's it going, man? Yeah, we'll get to bloom later. Keep that out, unless you want me to bake it into the texture. Which is essentially impossible to do. So, again, just labeling these. So we have our diffuse, normal, and specular, which, again, we're not really worrying about our specular or normal right now. But let's just make those folders anyway. We can even turn them on because they're empty. So we'll make another folder inside of diffuse. That is called jacket. Let's take a look at our picture. What else do we have here? We have jacket, we have gloves, we have clasps, we have legs and shoes. So we're gonna have a couple extra maps and stuff that we have to make, or not maps, but folders. Just gonna make jacket and gloves first, and then we'll worry about the rest. Or no, I'm gonna do legs first. All right, so jacket. Let's see. Turn on the blurred version. Let's get two nice values from here, foreground, and let's see, our darker. So I might just do the noise with her. I'm not quite sure yet. And there's also going to be the this piece, but we'll see. So just go ahead and make our. I'm gonna have to go inside of here because I have some clasps and toggles and stuff. There was a lot of empty space, so I decided to use it. I'm going to start this over, zoomed in a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. This one's a little bit more densely packed than the other one. There's a lot more little teeny pieces in this one than in the face, so just want to get in a little bit closer to make sure that these marquee selections are more or less where they needed to be. At any point, you can kind of hold space and click just to move your stuff around, to pan around your object. Let's see. Oh, what am I doing? This is all part of the... Sorry. One more time. So I'm doing it this way. You could also just... I'll show you another way that you can do it once I get to the... I don't know, maybe the legs or something. You could also just do this with a brush. You could paint your black and white values, but I'm not going to do that. This part, fortunately, is already all going to be the same color. So this is pretty tight in here. There's not much of a pixel edge here, and I might need to change that. I'm going to do my color texture and just see what I get. But there might end up being some bleed there that gets a little ugly between the two. Fortunately, their values are similar, so it probably won't be an issue, but when you're packing things in, you might want to be careful and not quite pack them so tight. You know, sometimes it's good to leave like maybe an 8 to 10 pixel border. Okay, so this is all a different color. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to make my jacket, fill this. And again, you know, you could do this different ways. You could make the layer masks on the bases themselves. And I'm actually going to add, because these are such simple selections over here, I'm just going to add this to the base color too. So actually I'll just show you now. With a brush I can come in, make sure that it's a hard edge. And I'm going to, as long as this is selected, I want to paint black to kind of pull some of this back. And so this is a way that you could do it too. It's really nice, you know, you can come in and just do your regular brush stroke. But it's just on the layer mask, you know, so if I disable this, I'm not actually affecting the texture underneath. So anyway, so let's get the color from the rim is kind of this lighter blue actually. And then the frilly part underneath is a lighter green. So let's fill this with that blue. Then I'll fill this bottom part with the green. And I just realized that actually this is part of the layer mask too. So let's just come in here. Because I forgot, this is actually kind of underneath. I don't think we're ever going to, this circle is the bottom of the dress. So that can be this color, and then this little piece. Really, I'm going to make them both dark green. This piece is actually the collar, which is completely hidden right now. But if I ever decide to get rid of the scarf, it's this little collar around here. I'll probably do a version without the scarf on. Okay. So, just using white now. This is okay. Well, no big deal. Just gonna do a fill. I just have to be more careful with my fill. Okay. And just come in with an actual paintbrush and gonna paint this color back in around there. Might have gone over a little bit there. So, okay. This is a good base color for the jacket. Let's do the legs next. So I know that I've done this part in class, but I'm gonna do it a little different this time. Probably. Well, actually, for now, I'm just gonna do the fill that I did, just to get a feel for it, and maybe some of the circles. So legs. Again, let's get our colors. And actually look at this a little bit clearer. So that's a good starting color, and then I think I want to go right in the middle, get the slightly darker orange. Okay, so let's fill that up, and I do my circles as a different layer. And again, just going to take a look at this real quick. There's only a couple of them. And they're a little uneven too, so I'd actually probably rather paint this by hand. But I'm just going to kind of block them in for now. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a sort of, you know, I'm trying to get a feel for the character and make sure that it looks kind of nice. fill those, and then I'm going to do the layer style like I did before with the inner glow that I switched to multiply. I change my color to this darker orange. Okay. So one nice thing, so you're going to notice there's opacity and fill, and they seem like they're the same thing, but they really aren't. They're the same thing in that they both affect the pixels that are actually in your layer, but opacity will affect the pixels as well as your layer effects. Whereas fill, if you decide that you don't want to use the color that you've done, so sometimes you might just want to like fill something with white because you wanted to create a stroke around it, but you don't want anything but the stroke to be seen. That's when you use fill and you turn the fill down. So you can see that keeps my layer style, but it gets rid of all of the, so if I turn my layer style off, there's nothing there. So it's just the layer style. So that's the only time you really want to use fill, the fill attribute. Otherwise, fill and opacity are exactly the same thing. Turn that down a little bit. I think I'm actually going to add a stroke, and I want to soften my, let's see, this is a little softer. Because I notice there's sort of like a little bit of a really dark line around these, so I'm going to give a stroke to this too. Just get a value for that. All I'm doing is double clicking on the layer. It brings up the layer styles. The stroke is going to be this color. And I want it on the inside. And I want it to be like 1, maybe 2 pixels. I want my opacity. I don't really want it to be too obvious. Okay, hit save. Leave that alone. 223. Okay. Just trying to think if. All right, let's just get through this real quick. I can't remember if there's anything else in specific that I wanted to mention. I'm just gonna keep going through this because texturing I think is really where everyone should be right now. So let's just finish knocking this out. What's next? We got our gloves and shoes and the buckles. So let's do the buckles and stuff real quick. What do we got here? So these are going to be a little bit lighter. It looks like these are pretty much the same value as some of these strokes. And I'm not going to do all these swirls right now, but so let's see. I'm going to turn on my blurred version. I'm going to grab a lighter green. I think this one's better. I'm actually going to go darker on the clasps, so there's actually a little bit more contrast between them. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the toggles the same color. The toggles are basically, let me see, let me open my Maya file. Pretty sure toggle's the right word for these. Yeah, like these little pieces here. So I'm just going to go dark green on both of those. And let's make a folder called toggles and clasp, what do I call that? Clasp rim, I guess, because these are the clasps. You can call things whatever you want, obviously. Just try to make things make sense. Fill that. And this is the color for the toggle, for the clasps. Let's actually do this just toggles clasps. And then I'll just change the color up here. So my layer mask is, I need to add this to the layer mask too. Fills are pretty easy to change, so if you want to do a couple fills on the same layer, that's fine. Clasp base, and now I have that made. Let's fill this with the lighter color. Alright, that's done. So what do we have left? We have gloves and shoes. Okay, so let's take a look at the gloves. The gloves, we have a couple pieces here. I'm going to go with this color for the gem. for now, I'm going to go with a slightly lighter piece from here. For this piece, I'm going to go solid color right now without the stroke around it, although I may end up doing that stroke. Well, let's see. Let's get those blocked in, though. I'm going to make a folder first for them. But I'm going to have to get a little bit more detailed within that folder to make all of these pieces work. Gloves, layer here, and let's do our selection around the gloves. So you've probably noticed from this too, my character has a fair amount of pieces to it, so it takes a little bit of breaking up to really make it all work. And this is just the example again that I've kind of given of why you might want to cut a few pieces out of your model now. I know that everyone wanted to get really ambitious with their models, and that's great. I mean, that's a really good attitude to have. But there's also a certain amount of realism you have to have too, and with the time constraints. I'd love to see everyone after this class, if you want to keep going on your models and push them a little bit further, that's fantastic, and you definitely should. You'll need to keep making more and more stuff to add to your portfolio after you graduate. But there's also the level of realism. So keep in mind, if you're still working on your model, keep in mind every piece that you're adding is another step in this process that you're going to have to do, and it keeps multiplying. So be careful with that. Don't get too out of control. Alright, so let's see. I've got my base is going to be this darker green, which is this color. So actually, no, I want to make my base. Let's turn on the blur real quick. Something in the middle there. What do we have over there? It's kind of a bluish green, I guess. I think that's fine. So, gloves, base, fill that. The gem is right here. So I'm going to fill that with the gem color. The gem housing piece is yet another color. It's much lighter than the glove, but darker than the gem. So I'm going to just do quick marquee selection around that. And I'm just adding all these to my base color for the gloves. Because I'm trying to go a little bit faster now to get this done. You may end up wanting to split these out, but, it's up to you. And then one more color for the, go a little bit darker for this band around here. Just slight variation. Yeah, so it's pretty blue. Do I want to go that blue? That might just because of the shadow. Let me see here. Maybe something like that. Yeah, that's better. It's almost exactly the same. It's a little bit darker. Hit save. Lastly, we have our shoes. So, oops, I have to do a folder. Again, these are all subfolders within diffuse. So if I close diffuse and work on something else, that's gone. Like it's nice and clean still. So let's get our marquee selection for shoes. I can actually start just with dragging that out, and then we'll just add to that. Just holding shift while I do this. Okay, make our layer mask, and the shoes are gonna be a little bit different. What do we have down here? So we have a much darker sole, big time. So let's do the sole first. Actually, no, I'll do that last. So we've got white on here, but I'm guessing that's kind of from the snow itself. And we have a little tag here, but I'm going to do that a little bit later with texture. I'm going to take this kind of green that's in here. And that's actually, this might be kind of a rubber. I hadn't even thought about that. I haven't looked this close. So I may end up remodeling this a little bit. For now, though, take that dark green for the shoe. It's going to be our shoe base. Make a separate layer for the sole. I think that's how it was spelled for that. That's going to be like this. It's going to be very dark. Well, that might be a little too dark. Yeah, that looks good. So I just remember from doing it, this is the sole. Obviously the bottom too should be included in that. fill that up. Darken it maybe a little bit. Okay. And what else do we have here? We have the laces, which are going to be more of this lightish green color. It's got a lot of green in here. So shoes, let's add laces to this layer mask. They're so far down here too, it'll be easy to keep these separated. Oh, getting a little close on that. Okay. Fill that. And I also need to add it to the layer mask. Okay. So I think that about finishes the initial block in. I do have a little bit of, yeah, I'm going to just do this. What's that called? The tongue, I think. Tongue detail. Let's just double check on our model real quick to make sure we get the front side. It should be, let's see. Open our UVs. Okay, the front is on the left. So, get my Maya controls mixed up with my, so for this, I'm actually going to make a solid, because I want to have a slightly beveled edge to it. So you can do that just by doing rounded rectangle. So there's a couple different options. You can have stroke, which I want my stroke turned off for now. I'm going to do my stroke with differently. So you can pick it with a fill color. So you basically do shape, a path, or pixels. I'm going to do a shape. Shape will give me a fill. And it creates like a Bezier curve, I believe, or like some sort of a curve. I'll just do it and you'll see. So you can see it creates this curve and fills it, and then basically you can see it's live shape properties. And anytime anything says live, and this is the same case in Maya, it means that there's like an active connection to something dynamic, like a curve or a physical, like a physics type thing. But it's nice. So like, you know, because of this, I can change the shape to, you know, maybe I want my corner bevel to be just 5 pixels by 5 by 5. I'm going to go with 6 actually. Or I want to change the color of my fill to something else. I can do that. Or I can add a stroke. And you can see with this little icon in the layer here that it's still alive. So at any point I can hit enter. It's still there, but I'd have to use my arrow tool to interact with it. And you can see then I can start like dragging my my path around. But I don't want to do that. All I want to do is rasterize my image. Rasterize basically just bakes it down into pixels, and it takes that live connection away. So I'm just going to then do a inner glow again, but I actually want to do it as a multiply. I'm going to go with a really dark green, and I'm going to make it really tight because I want it to almost be an outline. Because I believe that's how it was. I want the multiply turned up pretty high. And then I'm going to actually, let's see, can I make a second? No, that's all I want. You can see it's just like a little bit of this inner glow. And then I could actually even add like a little bit of a bevel to it. This could be kind of neat. It's going to make it kind of have this raised look. A little cheesy looking. A lot of things are kind of cheesy looking when you first start with them. Let's see, I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. I'm going to soften all of this up quite a bit. And I want my highlight to be kind of yellow. Let's see, it's coming, should be coming from this side too, I think. Yeah. I'm unchecking use global light, because you can actually have, like in a Photoshop, so you can like do a global light, which will make it that all of, you know, if you're actually doing a lighting thing in Photoshop, that's a good way to do it. Because then all of your drop shadows and light sources and everything will be from the same. But I'm not really doing that, I'm texturing, so it's not a big deal. Let's see, size, soften, could go up even more. So I want this to be very subtle. I don't want this to be very obvious. That's kind of the key to making these things look a little less cheesy, is just making them a little more subtle. I'm going to go a little yellow with this highlight. Just a little bit towards that. I'm going to take my opacity down. Multiply should come way down. So there we go. So it's nothing too crazy, but it gives it kind of the illusion of a little bit of depth, which I'm kind of interpreting this as like almost like a little thing that's been sewn on, like another little gem or jewel or something that's been sewn on. And these are kind of like misshapen too, so like you know, for my final texture, I'm not gonna want something that's so perfectly shaped like this. That's kind of ugly. I could even come in now and just do the puppet warp on it, kind of break it up. I'm gonna put a point in each corner because I want the corners to stay the same more or less, but you know, basically just like a soft warp selection kind of thing. It's kind of a fun way. It's sort of like a more controlled version of Liquify. Push this out. Yeah, that's fine. Well, no, I don't know. It's a little weird looking. A little bit of a point. Let's try it one more time. I'm just going to misshape it just a tiny bit. Nothing too extreme. Okay, that's fine. Might even turn this down in opacity just a little bit because I don't want it to be so blatant. But I think that's about it for roughing in the main values. So let's go see what this looks like in Maya. Save, and then save as. Just do a JPEG for now. Just keep our files small because this is not our final thing. We always have the Photoshop image to go back if we want to like do a higher bit depth or anything like that. But for now, JPEG is fine. So this would be called clothing. Diffuse 01. You can even just call it D if you want. A lot of times I'll start to simplify, especially with game development. You want to really simplify these as much as possible because you're going to be typing the same thing in over and over. Did I do D? I can't remember what I just did. But let's see. All right. So we have our material assignment, and we can open our Hypershade. Let's bring that over here. One sec. And okay, so clothing. Let's map our clothing now. So I think we can get away with probably just one material for this one, because all this stuff is more or less the same. We could maybe make the, oops. Yeah, doesn't really matter. So for this one, we can just do it the normal way, because we're just applying it. And you could do the normal way anyway, and then like once this is made, I could still be dragging like color into different, you know, I could bring any of these down. I could bring a new thing in here and apply this to something else, but you know, it's all very modular, which is great. Let's see. So I'm going to do a couple material adjustments too. So I think my specular for this, I don't have spec maps made yet, and I'm probably not going to make them today because we only got about 20 minutes left. It started getting really funky here. Do I still have occlusion? I thought I turned occlusion rendering off. Yeah, I had. That's weird. Switch. Ugh, I don't know why it's been happening a lot lately. Alright, well, let's get rid of viewport 2.0 for a little while. Hitting 6. Oh yeah, I actually have to apply the texture. Right now it's just black. So, do that. And there we go. So this is perfect, not perfect by any means, but this is really close now to this. So not at all ready for prime time or anything, but I think in looking at it, we can see right away, like, okay, like we're close to getting the feel. Like it's also making me think, like, okay, her legs could be a little bit thicker. There's a few little things that could be done. But the feel is getting really close right now. I think her clasps could be a little bit thicker. Surprisingly, I just didn't really notice until now. Let me soften these quick. This is a good way, you know, within 2 hours I was able to put this together, and that was with finishing some UVs and with explaining everything. I probably could have done this in about half an hour. But then once I baked my normal maps out from ZBrush, and stuff, like this is really going to start looking pretty nice. So this is because the normals are reversed. Let's flip those back. Okay, there we go. And you can see we've got our darker part inside here, but we're never going to see that. I'll probably want to go in and do this a slightly different color too, just so it stands out from this. But all of this is going to get like an actual texture painted pass done, which hopefully I can show you guys in a little bit. Possibly not live, I'm not sure. I'll probably just do that on my own and then just show you guys the results. Because that takes a little longer. But yeah, I think this is starting to look pretty good. I'll take the last 18 minutes just to set up a beauty render of it. It's not going to be anything amazing yet, just because all the materials are pretty much kind of boring. But I can spend a little time on those materials too. Let's actually do that. So let's start with skin. I'm not going to do subsurface yet, but I would be happy to show subsurface at any point. Actually, you know what? Why not? I'm just going to show subsurface. I'm just going to stick with the very, very simple Fast Shader X. There's a whole bunch of different subsurface versions. There's Fast Skin. Let's do Fast Skin. The difference is you just have to make sure, not the difference, but the caveat is you have to make sure that you have your renderer set to Mental Ray, which you should do anyway. Mental Ray is just a much, much better renderer than my standard software renderer. I'm just going to go right off the bat, set the quality to 0.5. For a final render, I'd go a little bit higher than that. My filtering, I'd go a little bit higher. But we're just setting it up right now. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to move that to the side. So for this, I'm going to map this. I'm going to map my skin down here. Basically, I'm just going to map. I'm going to want to take this color and map it into the overall color. So I can actually just middle mouse drag it to overall. And then let's map that on. Unfortunately, you kind of lose your view at that point. So your preview. I'm not going to get too into how this material works, but basically your scattering layers, these are the elements of basically telling, you know, the light how deep to go in and like at which depth does it start switching to these different values. So you have your subdermal, your backscatter, which is like if the light is coming from behind it, you'll see this backscatter color. So you can have like a different color that kind of shows through depending on which direction the light is hitting it from. She probably wouldn't get a whole lot of subsurface scattering off of her just because she has a lot of hair and a lot of stuff covering the back. So you're not going to have any, like, ears are usually where you'd see it. Like, if we had like a profile, we'll make a little bit of subsurface through the nose. But that's, you know, there's a lot of detail that goes into how these materials work, and I don't have time to get into that right now. But for now, we'll just go with just the basic standard. It should look pretty decent, even just like this. So let's see. Her hair will be next. Hair and scarf. We just want to turn down the specular color on this and the reflectivity. So this is one where I might want to actually make a separate one for the hair or make a separate texture map for the hair. Just because hair probably will actually be a little bit more reflective. I'm not going to do that right this second. But, you know, I could easily go into my Photoshop file and just make a spec map for that real quick. Yeah, I'll do it. It's only going to take me a second. So I'm just going to use this, actually. I'm going to go... Oh, I named that wrong. Specular. I'm just going to actually paste that exact thing in. Nope, that's not what I wanted. So this is already the map that I want. This is black and white. I'm actually going to want to bring these values a little closer to each other. Just by doing this. I don't want full black and I don't want full white. And this is going to make the hairs in here and everything else is there. So it's going to make the hair a little bit shinier than the rest of the body. So I'm going to just save this again real quick as hair spec. Let's see. Or head, I guess. This would get replaced eventually because the skin I want to use is different specular value for the skin, so I would do more work on that. But for now, this works fine, and I'm only going to plug it into hair for this example. So let's just go down to specular color. Map that. Where'd you go? Come on. I'm not sure where it went. That's really annoying. Alright, well, it should be over here if it did it right. Yeah. Yeah, it's really slowing down for some reason. I'm not sure why. And I'm actually going to label this head spec, just so I can remember. This is clothing diffuse. And this is head diffuse. Save it real quick. I guess I'm using a lot of RAM because I've been in Photoshop for a while. Anyway, so now you'll see that the hair is a lot brighter than this, and that's because I've plugged a specular map into it that is just a slightly lighter value. So let's go back to the material for the hair. You'll see. So as we turn, I don't want reflections on, really on any of these. I don't want reflectivity except for maybe the eyes. Skins haven't been shown right now. Eyes are a little different. We can keep that up, and eccentricity can go up a little bit. Or no, down. I want to go tighter. That's right. So you can actually see as I do that. Eccentricity just kind of is the focus of the specular highlight. So this is like the brightness of what's hitting it. Reflectivity you're not going to see in the preview. That's just when you render it. Then the roll off just basically completely. It's like a slightly finer tune for the color and the eccentricity. Eyebrows are staying kind of shiny too. Let's see. Clothing, we want to turn reflectivity all the way down on the clothing. We don't want that to be very specular at all. That's pretty much going to be set to almost 0 for everything. So hit save. I think that's a good initial setup. So I'm going to give her a ground plane so we can cast a shadow. And because I haven't centered her yet, I just have to move the ground plane to her. Oh, I moved the pivot. Scale this way up. I'm just going to leave it as a plane for now, and I'm going to make sure that it's just the standard Lambert attached to that. This is just to catch shadow and to sort of ground her a little bit. So once you have your materials set to, you can also change this to like your beauty render layer if you want. I'm just going to keep it as it is for now. And let's see, I'm going to add one area light to start. And that's going to be our fill, kind of our main, I guess key light is actually the right word, not fill. I get these mixed up sometimes. I'm not a lighting expert, but I think I can set up a decent lighting setup. So, let's see, you go to create, lights, area light. So the nice thing about area lights is they can be very soft and they give a really nice fall off. If you do this with like, it'll kind of crush your render times a little bit, but when you're just trying to do a single beauty render, you know, it's okay if the render takes a couple minutes. Scaling it up. So scaling actually will have an effect on the lighting, but I usually just get the right scale and everything that I want first, and then I'll work with distance and intensity to get the values that I want. But I know that I want it to go across her whole body. The area light, but what an area light really does is it's casting rays out of this box. And it's casting a whole bunch of rays, and it gives you a nice soft, it's kind of like the, I haven't done lighting in real life, but you've probably seen in studios those big rectangular lights that just send off like a very diffused kind of even lighting. So let's go to my options. I'm going to go to quadratic decay. Make sure my shadows are turned on, and let's come in here now and just hit bring up my render. I'm gonna make sure my resolution right now is set to 960 by 540. That's pretty small resolution. It's a good resolution for testing, but I'm going to show you a way that we can kind of get around that. So I'm going to set my regular to, I'm going to do low HD, which is 1280 by 720. This is like the, 1920 by 1080 is full HD. This is sort of like half of that. I'm not going to do anything fancy yet with, I might end up turning on GI at some point, but for now I'm just going to go with, see what I can get without it. Okay, so that's good. If I click the eye, that brings up my render view, and I can go to options, test resolution. I'm going to set this to 75%. So you can see that like our test renders are going to be at 960 by 540. And this is just because it'll render faster, so I can get a better idea. I'm going to hit save before I hit an IPR. So IPR is basically an interactive renderer. So when I click this, it's going to give me kind of a wireframe view. And I'm going to actually frame this better. So if you click this button, you can actually see the framing of your model. Alright, so IPR, it's going to keep this camera, and whatever I drag over, it's going to render. And it's going to keep updating, so I can make changes to my light source. So already you can see the subsurface. I may just have to take that off for now, because that's going to give me some weird stuff. Let's do the whole body. This is rendering pretty fast, though. And now I'm just going to start bumping up the value here to see what I can get. And I think the specularity on the hair needs to come way down also. Let's go way higher to 20. Okay. So that's super bright, but I think if I move this back a little bit, it'll be okay. So before I go any further with that, I know I'm pretty much out of time for today, but let's see. Just want to plug in. I don't want to do this. Okay. I want to pipe this into diffuse color also. I need to middle mouse drag it onto diffuse color. So that should give me a better result. Let's see. This time I just hit render. Just gonna see what I get. So you're gonna notice some noise at first. You really have to pump the settings up. Yeah, it's still way too dark. Let's see. Diffuse weight. Oh, I just need to go to like 0.9. So let's re-render this. Man, that's really dark still. Let's see what happens if I go to 1. It's just absorbing, or it's not doing quite what I want with the light right now. Alright, so I'm just going to go back to the regular skin shader, or the regular blend for her right now, for her skin. Worry about the subsurface another time. Skin. Spec can be kind of high. I want it pretty eccentricity turned way up. I'm also going to change the hair a little bit. The hair needs to come down quite a bit. I think the eyes eccentricity needs to be set very, very low to like 0.02. Roll off, I'm going to drop, and reflectivity I'm going to turn down. Just picking up way too much of a highlight. So let's try this again. Okay. It's really bright. So I'm going to soften this a little bit, and I'm actually going to create a render camera now, just so I can always refer to that. I'm just going to, with that selected, you can just look through selected, and let's turn on the resolution gate, and keep our camera here. I'm just going to keyframe all of these at frame 1. Just so, if I move around or anything, I can just be like, oh, no, wait, go back. Oh, no, it didn't do it. That's weird. What? Did that not work? Okay, that's bizarre. Oh, because I had auto key turned on. I turn that off. Okay, so now I'll keyframe all these. And even if I move around, make sure you have auto key turned off. Just drag back and it'll bring you right back to the right view. So this render view will keep using the same camera. So now I can pop out into, and her skin is just way too bright right now. Like I'm definitely gonna need to fix that. But you know, I can move around now and I can mess with the light and select different things. I'm gonna set this to like 12, I think. I'm gonna change my shadow rays to like 4, just to make this a little bit softer. And then I'm also going to add my rim light now, because I'm running out of time. Just going to use a directional light for this. And this is basically what I'm trying to do, is just get a tiny little highlight. I think I'm actually going to do it around her left side, because I'm keying her from the right a little bit, from our right. So we're going to put a little bit of a... Let's do that in this direction. I'm going to angle it up a little bit, and then I'm going to tell this object to not cast shadows, because I don't want it to cast... I don't want this to catch onto that. So I'm just going to cast shadows turned off. I'm going to blow this out kind of high. So this has no quadratic or linear decay or anything. This is going to be the same value no matter what. But let's see what we get just along the side here. So this is a nice thing. Once you have your render view up, you can just kind of drag over an area, click render region. So basically I'm just doing this to sort of separate her from the background. So you can see that gives a nice little bit of rim. I think actually maybe don't need it quite so bright. Set it to like 3. I do want to make sure it's casting shadows, because I want it to kind of interact with the character at least. Unfortunately, the skin, I'm just not super happy with the color of the skin, but I'm just going to stick with that for now. So again, I'm actually going to angle this. Again, this is my key. So like the 3-point lighting, there are better tutorials out there probably, but you basically want a key, a rim, and a fill. The fill is just to make sure that everything in the scene is bright enough, and that would be sort of like a soft, possibly a... I'd probably do another area light. You could actually do this with 3 area lights, and that might give you a little bit more control. So I'll add a fill real quick. Fill is kind of just to make sure that the shadows aren't so dark from this that like you see nothing. Any lighting experts watching this might be cringing. I may be explaining it a little bit wrong, but for the most part, that's how it works. So this is going to be real big, but it's going to be a lot less intense of a value. So I might actually rotate this one up a little bit. Set the fall off to quadratic. Quadratic is basically the closest to real life. Linear renders a little bit faster, I think, but you know, think of it like a bell curve or a curve. So like quadratic, the fall off starts to happen a lot quicker, and that's more natural for what you would see in real life. Set this more just to like, and you can change the color on these too if you have different colors that you want to try. Set this to like 4. I'm gonna move it back, and I'm gonna change my moving to being object spaced, because I want to move these the way that these are. So this should be the brightest. Maybe go to like 14 with it. Let's scale it up a little. That should be the brightest. This one should be a little less bright, just kind of there to sort of complement everything. And then your rim is just to give you that highlight along the edge. You really want to keep it pretty faint, so I might even... Sometimes you want to blow it out. I don't know. For some reason it's not giving me what I thought I'd get, but... So let's see. It's not too bad. I think this is a pretty good start. Obviously, this gives us a better idea of like the different steps we want to take. Once I get the normal map in here, this is all going to look a lot better. And once I start doing a more hand-painted texture, for the most part, you know, this is kind of close to what I want. The hair is still too bright, too shiny. So I'm going to turn this like all way, way, way down. Just going to render just the hair area. Again, her face is super pale and super plain right now. Huh. Oh, max electricity needs to go up. Wrong direction. Whoops. Alright, I'm going to break this connection to this spec map right now. I just don't want it that high. Let's see here. Okay, that's not bad. Eyes, I think, are a little bit shinier than they need to be still. Okay, but for the most part, I think this is looking pretty good. This is just your typical studio setup. So let's just set these settings up a little bit higher now. Set the overall quality to 1. Filtering, Mitchell, you can go to Mitchell. That'll give you a better outline on everything. It's going to definitely take longer to render than the Gauss filter. But it's going to look pretty nice. Let's see, environment, we're going to leave the environment off. I'm going to get to that. I know it's already 3, but I'm going to get to that anyway, because it's just one more step, and it's one more thing that you can do to light your scene in a more natural way. So let's also change the orientation of our setup here. So we're doing our widescreen, we're doing our 16:9 aspect ratio. I'm going to change it to vertical aspect ratio. Because our character's vertical, we want to show that off. We have a lot of empty space on the sides that are pretty unnecessary. So I'm actually just going to go to 1920, or no, yeah, by like, that looks pretty good. Maybe 1440. Yeah, I like that. Frame it real close. I'm going to select my current camera again. Change, or no, let's go to frame 2. Go a little bit tighter. And key that selection. So now I have 2 different keys. I can, you know, this is a great way to set up multiple cameras. Just keyframe a few different angles, each at a new frame. And you can always do a batch render and have a bunch of different looks. So again, yeah, let's just keep going with this. I'm going to show a quick way to make a nice composite too.